In mission together we all join our hands. In mission together throughout many lands. With our hearts united, our voices we raise to God our Creator in glorious praise.
Hi, and welcome to Reflections, a program sponsored by Paducah Cooperative Ministry, where we believe God is doing work with human hands. My name is Jay Gottman, and I'm the lead minister at First Christian Church here in Paducah. And today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Reverend Charles Uhlik, who is with us from Grace Episcopal Church. Welcome, Charles.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. One of the reasons we wanted to invite you here is because you're fairly new to the community, and we wanted to meet you and introduce you to those who watch this program and let them know a little bit about who you are and the congregation that you serve and some of the things that brought you to the ministry here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been a Episcopal priest for a little over 12 years. And before that, I was a Roman Catholic priest for 7 years up in Omaha, Nebraska area. That's where my wife and I are from originally, Cornhuskers. So I know that doesn't ring too well around these parts with the cats and all. But this is the farthest east we've ever been in my ministry. I've been a priest overall for just a little over 21 years. And a part of that ministry has been primarily in family and life of most congregations with youth, etc. And have been enjoying being a priest now in the Episcopal Church tradition for these past years. I really enjoy being at Grace Episcopal. That's where the people have called me to, my new ministry. And being here in Paducah has just been an exciting time. We are, currently just trying to figure out, the community as far as neighborhoods, and we're trying to find a house. We're still in that process, so we're renting. And my kids go to Clark Elementary School. I have two little ones. Nathan, who's my 10-year-old, and he's in 4th grade at Clark, and then my littlest is Olivia, and she's in 2nd grade there. And then I have my oldest, who's at Paducah Middle School, Claire. And so my wife, Susie, and I chose to come and answer the call to Grace Episcopal. Primarily, it fits our small town feel. But Paducah really doesn't have that. I mean, I really feel it's really a growing metropolitan area in western Kentucky, and I really like the energy. I think this is the Quilt Week here, yes. So we're downtown area is starting to see a lot of energy around our church, etc., and that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yes, yes. Paducah, yes, it feels much bigger than it actually is. And so how do you get from Nebraska to Kentucky? Where all have you ministered in that journey?
Yeah, well, as I said, most of my early ministry as a Roman Catholic priest, I spent most of my years in family and youth ministry. And I was also a parochial teacher during those years. So, teaching has always been a part of my life and something I really enjoy. Prior to that, though, I was in a kind of a studio setting like this, and my hope and dream was to take the message of Jesus Christ out on the airwaves. But my bishop at the time had different ideas for me and my youth ministry. So I think anything we can do to touch the hearts and minds of people where they're at in social media, to television, broadcasting, or radio, anyhow we can send that message out, the better. And so I'm still doing youth ministry at our church. Really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying getting to know all the families there. So my early days in ministry and in seminary was up in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then I went to Chicago, Illinois for my graduate studies. And then did my Anglican studies when I became an Episcopal priest in Kansas City in the West Missouri Episcopal Diocese. And so I've served in Nebraska in multiple congregations as a teaching positions, and then came to Kansas City, then Springfield, Missouri, and then back up to the Red Wing, Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
There's another wonderful little city. Red Wing shoes are originally from there.
Sure.
And then also pottery. So Paducah has the quilt show, and Red Wing has pottery. So it seems like I go with the arts and crafts wherever I go in my ministry. So it's a lot of fun. But I really, I think the biggest part of my ministry I think I enjoy doing is just getting to know people and helping them understand that they're loved by God.
Sure.
And with you calling me up and putting this together, learning that Paducah Cooperative Ministry here in Paducah was started by and continues to work with multiple churches. That really excites me. And being involved with that kind of ministry to helping an umbrella of many people who are not doing well in their lives and trying to feed them and get them back on their feet to be productive citizens, I think is really what our role as clergy are, and to let them know that God loves them and they can continue to be vital and energetic people in the community. So
sure. And I know Grace has had a long history of being a part of Paducah Cooperative Ministry, and
that's right.
The number of congregations and organizations that have partnered over the years, I think it's closing in on 70 different worshiping organizations are now a big part of that. And you're right, that give and take between the congregations, we don't always agree theologically, but for us to be able to sit down and discuss and put our differences aside to make a difference through the work that PCM does with help with food and rent and utilities and the new Fresh Start Village, the homeless shelter that's in play. That's why we do what we do, and I'm very appreciative of the ministry that Grace has offered. I think Grace may be the oldest congregation in Paducah. Is that accurate?
No, I think it's First Baptist.
Okay.
Is the oldest, but we're not far behind. I think we're on the flood wall on the murals as one of the 5 oldest congregations in Paducah. But yeah, we're certainly, I think, number 2, I think, at least.
Sure. Now, for those who aren't as familiar with the Episcopal system, do you get moved, or do you have a choice of where you move, and how did your bishop decide to place you here in Paducah, of all places?
Well, that's a great question. The Episcopal process is that first we as clergy are praying if this is a good place or a move to even occur. And so we have a main system in New York City for all of us as clergy that we put our information, our resumes and data about ourselves, and then congregations, and then we press the button and say, I'm ready for a move. And then that information goes out to congregations that are in the search process for a new priest. And so then we are contacted by them, or we contact them by sending them introduction letter saying that we looked at your profile and say, this might be a good fit. And then during that process, they start to either lift you up as a possible candidate, and then they contact you personally and then invite you to come and visit the church and the congregation via a search committee. And then doing some Skype interviews. That's fairly new now, doing things via the web, which is not originally what I have ever been a part of, but the old telephone conference call was the old way.
Right.
But we live in new technology, and so and then they make an official call, and then they have to ask the bishop of the diocese that we belong to here in Western Kentucky, which is called the Diocese of Kentucky for the Episcopal Church. And Bishop Terry White is my bishop, and so I interview with him along with my wife. We get to meet him and to see if it's a good fit, and he gives us a little bit more information about the community, and then are lifted up, and then we allow the Holy Spirit to say yes or no to that process. So.
Sure. So after going through this process, what things excited you the most about being able to come to Paducah and work with Grace?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I could barely pronounce the word Paducah at first, because I was like I was reading back, and it was like Mark Twain books, and I vaguely remember, I think, reading about Paducah, and then, coming down the Mississippi and the river, being at a river community. Coming from Nebraska, I'm a corn-fed Nebraskan, and raised on a farm, and with 5 brothers and 1 sister. And I was like, farthest east. Wow, that's pretty far east so I've always stayed somewhat in the Midwest, as I was saying earlier. So coming to Western Kentucky, I think, was about the closest east, getting away from family, my dad and my mother-in-law, etc. We probably wanted to go, and we came to visit. I was really surprised what a great community it is. Very friendly, and Kentuckians, it isn't, the stereotype of the South, I felt. I thought it was really a wonderful, welcoming, lovely community. And we were just celebrating the Dogwood Trail this past week, and the Dogwoods, and it just excited me just to be in this milieu of Rivertown people, which I had a little taste up in Red Wing, Minnesota, on the Mississippi. So when we accepted the call, and we came down for the first interview, just sitting down and listening to the search committee, and just really felt like there was a real a place for us here, and to put some roots in for a long-term call, God willing, that these people have asked me to do some wonderful ministry with them, as far as their family life, etc. So that, and the diversity of the community too. It wasn't just a stereotypical a white community, but there's a great diversity of people here, and that also excites me.
Sure. Any ministries or programs going on right now that have been going on for a while that were attractive to you, or you thought were really doing the ministry that we're called to do by getting out into the community and sharing the good news of what it means to be a follower of Christ, and this is how we're practicing it?
Yeah, well, I think PCM, a great example of what Grace is doing, participating in that. Community kitchen. We are involved every month in helping feeding many of the folks who are needing a meal on Sunday afternoons, and then also helping with the home warming center at the community kitchen area. And those really were very attractive, and to see that the Grace Episcopal was so involved in social work for the community really was very attractive to me, and my wife and my family as well. So that was really exciting. And then also just doing, working with youth and their families, and looking at working on a program. We have a program called Godly Play in our church. It's Montessori-based religious education, and it is a free-thinking way for children to think of Jesus Christ and being a part of their life. And so it's not your typical curriculum where you're telling a Bible story and then you do an art craft project, but the children are much more involved in the story of the Bible, and they take parts of the Bible and then make it a part of their learning experience. So that really also really excited me, and to see that the community was really attracted to that model of religious education was really cool.
Right, and if I'm correct, that's very interactive in terms of trying to help a child, not give them the answers, but open them up to the possibilities, asking lots of open-ended questions to think about, why would Jesus act this way? Why would God behave this way? And get their result.
Exactly. And so they're bringing Jesus and the Bible stories to life by their interpretation of how they see Moses interacting with the people who are having a golden calf, for instance, or seeing Jesus being baptized. You know, what that must have felt like, being in that river called the Jordan, and that water being poured over him, and kneeling in the water with the sand, and what that felt like. And then to allow them just that creativity to come out, and to see their sparkle in their eyes of how God is a part of their lives and coming alive in their young faith life as they move forward. So,
sure. Yeah. Now, is this the first time that you've worked with Godly Play in a ministry setting?
It is.
Okay.
And it is exciting. I've never been trained in it, but I like the model of Godly Play, and I'm hoping that the community continues to support it. We had a wonderful minister, a priest when I came first, Mother Megan Holland, native here of Paducah, and she accepted another call elsewhere, and she and my predecessors, Mother Libby Wade, as well, were taught and trained in Godly Play, and so I'm hoping to lift up more people in that model.
Sure.
Of teaching.
And I know you've worked a lot with youth and in previous ministries. How has youth ministry changed in the years you've been in ministry, and what challenges do you see moving forward in an age where it seems like there are more and more activities, and church sometimes becomes just one of those activities? What do you see some of the trends currently?
Well, I think social media, like I was mentioning earlier, is a big one, and I'm always up on Facebook, and I've created a special Facebook site for a group site for youth families and the kids who are on Facebook, getting on Instagram, and just following and seeing the kids in action and seeing what they're interested in. But not necessarily being overly, like an umbrella clergy person over them, but just really trying to see what's interesting them. I think most of the same things are a constant. Kids want to have fun. They want to get to know their peers, and they also are always testing you to seeing, what is it like to be an adult? Yeah, because they're wanting to be an adult right now, and they're still trying to figure it out. How to dress, how to talk, and I think just mentoring them and letting them know that it's okay to be charitable, forgiving, how to present yourself as a holy young boy, young girl, young woman, young man, as they grow and mature. So I think youth ministry, there are some constant things that are always there. I think the peripheral things always continually change, though, like technology, the things that interest them, and I think as when I was a kid, and I'm sure you can relate to this too as well, Jay, that the fact that we're always trying to test our parents and seeing what we can get away with. And that's also a part of being a young person these days too. So, but also to remind them that God loves them and wants to be a part of their lives too.
Does it surprise your youth specifically that you're on Facebook or specifically Instagram or something that typically is trending more toward a younger demographic?
Yeah.
What kind of responses have you gotten?
Well, I think I'm kind of weird for the most part. That this old guy who's their clergy person is interested in what they're doing. They kind of think it's like, wow, how do you know these things?
Right.
And so it's always kind of fun. And I like a good joke and prankster puns, and so I love to kid around with the kids and.
So it's not
around.
a Bible quote that you throw up on Instagram.
No,
You
no.
put jokes and.
Yeah, I love to post pictures of what we're doing now in our group setting, of course. But without, I always need their parents' permission for that kind of stuff to make it more public. But I really like to see the kids more involved in helping us as a church making decisions as well. And so I'm always inviting them to be a part of the leadership and to making how we make decisions as a church, as a youth group. One of my big things I really am working at right now is to get more ecumenical involvement with our youth in different churches. And so I'm really interested in some of the downtown churches that I'm close to, that I know, I'm getting to know. I've only been here a few months, 7 months or so. But I'm really excited to see other youth pastors who want to work together, do lock-ins together, do some joint youth group activities together. Those things excite me as well, because I think, as you were mentioning, we have a lot more similarities than differences as Christians, and most of the kids go to school together, and so why not build on our strengths as faith communities as opposed to our differences. And that also includes our Islamic brothers and sisters, our Jewish brothers and sisters. I think it's important to always try to build bridges and to look at where is God touching our hearts and not necessarily tearing us away from each other. Because that, for me, is part of my strong theology is to always to remind ourselves that Christ wanted us to treat each other with respect and dignity and to love one another as He loved us. And so I think without that, we would live in a very divisive community where we become very bitter and angry with each other. And I don't see that in Paducah. I see us as communities that really try to lift each other up and to see our strengths. And that really is exciting. And again, part of the reason why I chose to come here.
Yeah. And it is exciting to see other congregations coming together and working together, especially with our youth, trying to get them to see the bigger picture of what it means to be a person of faith, and just interacting and having fellowship, like you say, something like a lock-in, joint activities, working out in the community. All those things are fantastically important, I think. What about participation in worship? Do children and youth currently participate? Or are you trying to build that into the DNA of Grace?
Yeah. I'm always trying to get our youth to participate in our worship. We have a really strong, what we call an acolyte ministry, where the children and young people help us lead in our processions and help serve at the altar. And also musically, we have various groups of kids who are musically inclined or in the arts, period. I think, the more you can get your child involved in your faith life, the more they have a connection with God. Because then they start to see things, the pieces of life come together, and they see how God is interwoven into the fabric of our lives in many ways. Pardon the pun, but, the cliche, but I think that it is really true. And so my daughter plays the viola, and my kids are involved in sports, but I think anytime we can involve those types of things, we have a really strong Boy Scout program, Troop 1 at Grace, and to see the scouting program. We have Cub Scouts and Weeblos, and we did have a Girl Scout program for a period of time, but I think anytime we can lift up the kids and involve them in making good decisions on how to treat people with respect and to treat themselves with respect and dignity, it is good role modeling.
Sure, and it really sets up the whole idea that we are one body together, no matter your age.
Yeah.
And it's always fascinating when children and youth get involved in lead worship, I think, because the perspective and sometimes the maturity that they bring blows people away.
Yeah.
And their insights are sometimes so far advanced for the age that they look.
Yeah.
And so I always think that God has to be at work in that process, and it really is hopeful to see those kids involved in leading worship and letting the whole congregation know that we've got a bright future with these young people.
Just the other day, on last Sunday, I had one of my high school students, they led the children's sermon, and Jason did a great job leading that service, that preaching with the kids, and so anytime we've got senior recognition coming up, and one of my second graders is Liam Black, and he has been practicing the organ. And one of his things he's been practicing is the Star Wars March.
Oh, wow.
And so we're planning on incorporating that into the service that Sunday, either like going out of worship or in as a prelude type of thing. Or so it'd be kind of fun and kind of making it a youth experience to celebrate our seniors who are graduating.
Well, that'll be interesting. I can't wait to hear the feedback that you get from playing Star
fun.
Wars theme during worship.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be attractive for a couple of generations and maybe a little confusing for some others.
Yeah, I think they'll be going, what is that all about?
Right.
And that's good though. I think, for multi-generations ages, it's really important to see that what the kids are interested in, but how we can also adapt it and relate it to our faith life. It may not always fit perfectly, but this is where they're at. And I think when we can say God is really the force, the awakening inside of us, the Holy Spirit, I think for me, that's how I can make it a touchstone for them to see that, the higher power who we call God and Jesus Christ in our lives is really the spark of the divine in the life around us as a community. So
Right, and it's all about meeting people where they are, and if that's where our kids and youth are in the moment, then that helps draw God into the present, I think, and allows people to experience the fullness of how God works in our world. And that's an amazing thing that we get to do in ministry each and every day, each and every week, not just on Sunday during worship.
That's right.
We get to see God involved in people's lives in ways that is just amazing. Yeah. And so I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
For you and
Thank you.
And your community. That's going to be a wonderful Sunday.
It'll be pretty exciting, I think. Well, and mainly just lifting up those seniors who are taking another step in their life, to let them know that their faith community is there with them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Charles. I appreciate that. We've had Reverend Charles Uhlik with us today on Reflections. Please remember to support Paducah Cooperative Ministry in any way you can. You can go to paducahcoopministry.org for more information. And we hope to see you next time on Reflections.
Nation.